Story out in the Times. Governor Cuomo is running for re-election. And of course, you know, this is a slightly New York centric, but in many ways it is not, because if there is a greater problem with the Democratic Party, I am not aware of it. The Democratic Party, mainstream Democratic Party two-step, which of course is we're going to be good on social issues. And that's in many respects a recent phenomena over the past 5 or 6 years, where the Democratic Party has provided a full-throated endorsement of a woman's right to choose, coming back from the brink of those days where we have to be a little bit sensitive to people who really think that women are chattel and don't have, and where the Democratic Party was equally as weak on issues like marriage equality. Like, you know, we can't, you know, it's okay to be gay, but we don't want to make them actually have the same rights as the rest of us. That has changed. And at least there's been attempts in a New York State. Governor Cuomo deserves deserves credit for what he's done in terms of some type of sensible gun control. But then the flip side of that is, and then what we're going to do is we're basically going to kowtow to Wall Street. We are going to continue with austerity. We are going to promote wealth inequality through taxation. And Governor Cuomo is the poster child for that type of Democratic politician. And here is a guy who really wants to have a margin of reelection. And if you need any evidence that this is the way that politicians think, you merely have to look across the Hudson to what Chris Christie was doing to run up his electoral tally. Governor Cuomo wants to do the same thing. And he wants to do so by appealing to Republicans and to the wealthy in such a way that makes it clear that he is on their side, that he knows he has Democratic support all wrapped up, and he's going to continue with he's going to put former Governor Pataki, really, in my personal experience of Pataki, which granted was only an hour, sitting on a panel with him on the Dylan Ratigan show, sitting there during the breaks, hearing what he had to say, is an odious individual who was mocking the notion that Medicare was important to people, as he was also talking in the breaks of his massive farm on overlooking one of the Great Lakes, I think it was, and just literally mocking the idea of Medicare being important. And Pataki was put on a panel that came up with a scheme to basically cut property taxes across the board, but punish less wealthy counties and municipalities by saying basically, well, we'll cut your taxes, but within 2 years, you've got to begin to cut your services to people. And we see it when it comes to universal pre-K. We see it in terms of his lackluster support for instituting some type of public financing system for campaigns. We see it in him putting up roadblocks for the idea of allowing municipalities local home rule when it comes to setting a minimum wage. And this story in the Times, and you know, take this with a grain of salt, because one never knows how these things are spinning, and one doesn't know necessarily what's in the mind of Governor Cuomo. He's got $33 million in his war chest, and he may or may not run in 2016. I'm sure he would like to, but he sees that that Clinton is a force that he couldn't necessarily reckon with. But according to the New York Times, he is putting out the word to Republican state senators, to Republican donors, to Republican operatives, don't nominate Rob Astorino. He's a Westchester, which is a county, a very wealthy county just outside of New York City. He's a Westchester County executive. Don't put your support behind this guy. Because if you do, I'm going to run against him and paint him as a hardcore conservative who is against marriage equality and against any type of sensible gun control. And that is going to hurt your down ticket races. Now, just a little bit of backstory here. The Democrats were set to take over the Senate, New York State Senate. They've had the Assembly for a long time. And New York State politics are nasty, just nasty. But they were set to take over the Senate. And Cuomo at the time said, look, I'm not getting involved in this. The Republicans now control the Senate with the help of 5, I think it is, supposed independent Democrats who are essentially, Joe Lieberman's in many respects. They caucus essentially with the Republicans. Cuomo wants to maintain that Republican Senate because they are much more amenable to his tax schemes. And so there are 3 explanations as to why he might be doing this. One is that he may be simply trying to muddle the Republican race in hope of gaining a stronger margin of victory. Possible. Others may speculate that Cuomo thinks that Astorino is a better candidate than he could be. But 3 is this notion that he does not want the Republicans to lose the state Senate, control of the state Senate, so that he can continue his essentially moderate Republican, old school Republican agenda of cutting taxes and imposing austerity. Now, like I say, it's very difficult to know specifically, what's up, because a lot of this stuff is sourced anonymously. One Republican senator who asked not to be named, he told me that if Astorino runs, he's going to pound the hell out of him and talk about guns and gays, and it won't be pretty, and it will hurt all of us. One official said the governor had indicated he would refrain from such a polarizing campaign if the Republicans ran a candidate who, in his view, was more moderate. In addition to offering his commentary on Mr. Astorino, Mr. Cuomo has also tried to woo Republican donors and others who might be inclined to support a Republican last month. And on Monday, remember, he's got $33 million. There's no way he's going to lose this election. Never in a million years. Last Monday, the governor talked up his record to business leaders at the Harvard Club in Manhattan. Kenneth G. Langone.
Where does that name sound familiar?
He who threatened a bishop in
I'll tell you what, Father. I got to meet with Cuomo soon. But if you keep talking about the goddamn poor people, you will be hearing from me again, my friend.
That's right.
I promise you this.
It would be a real
he said
shame.
that-
It would be a real shame if that cathedral didn't have all the
No.
pretty colored windows, didn't it?
He said that to the bishop about the Pope.
Yes.
He was talking about the Pope.
Yes.
Like, please, can you tell the Pope to stop talking about this
Yeah,
stuff?
it'd be a real shame if you just had natural light coming into that cathedral, wouldn't it? So this is what's going on in New York, and why this is important beyond New York is that in many respects, this is going to be a template. Look, if the governor of New York can get away with saying, or get away with machinations saying that I want a Republican-controlled Senate so that I can get my austerity measures and my tax-cutting measures passed through, so that I can keep universal pre-K from being fully funded, so that I can keep municipalities that want to raise the standard of and provide a living wage for their workers. If I can do that, then a Democrat running nationally can do anything. That's why this is important nationally. And it really, really, really gets my goat. This is like the antimatter to my enthusiasm about postal banking.